Will there be a official Time One sale from Big Time, or are the Time One mystery boxes the only way to get a Time One?
For people who are not as familiar, we're an MMO game on PCs where you can roam in some open worlds and then drop into dungeons and battle with enemy. And some of the loot that gets dropped are NFTs. Those NFTs are cosmetics. They're like skins and emotes, and then you can sell those on the marketplace that we have inside the game, or you can use them to swag out your character. We launched our beta version of the game about almost 2 months ago, and then we're ramping up for a global launch, hopefully later on in the third quarter, but not a set date yet. The game started with Ari and Thor. They're our founders, and Ari was the one of the co-founders of Decentraland. For people who are familiar with Web3 games, I think it's still one of the biggest by market cap blockchain games that's out there. And Thor was one of the early on people at Zynga Games, which when they had their IPO, I think it was the biggest since Google. So they came together, they conceptualized BigTime, and then they pulled in developers from mostly other AAA rated studios with creators from Fortnite, League of Legends, Gears of War, and some other iconic games. Really wanted to combine that NFT knowledge that Ari and Thor had from Decentraland with the gameplay ability from these other creators, and then combine them in a way that we thought users would really like in an MMO. I think development, like first coding, probably started somewhere around 2.5 years ago. So we've been around for a little bit, but only just released relatively recently.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like from an art perspective, I think this is the first game I like look at, and then I can imagine myself playing as well. How many artists are working on this? How does that work?
I'm not sure. I'll ballpark it and say between 10 and 20, somewhere in there. We've got about 80 full-time people at Big Time. One of the head creatives for Big Time described why and how he came up with the art style for Big Time. One of the challenges was you have to be able to balance it with the graphics capability of your average user, right? You don't want it to be such high quality that people on average computers can't play it. But at the same time, you need to make a timeless art style, right? So it's Big Time, there's time travel involved. So whatever that style is that works in futuristic settings also needs to be able to work in prehistoric settings and kind of everything in between. So it's a balancing act of trying to get that artistic style with the quality, with something that's also iconic that people can recognize right off the bat as that is quintessentially Big Time.
Based on the art style and the genre, can you imagine an integration in Big Time with the Omnimores or something like that in the future?
No, it's definitely possible, especially with the way that we built space. Space is a very like kind of privatized area where users can decorate it and add things inside of it. That's very much like their own area. We call it the personal pocket universe, and space are expansions onto that. And the idea is like, hey, it's almost like a Sims house where you can make it look whatever you want. That certainly sets the foundation for potential partnerships with people if they want to hang like NFT art inside of their space in the future. It's definitely a possibility. But really, like for our roadmap from now until global launch, the team is like ensure that the game launches is as successfully as possible. But there are definitely components there where we could very easily expand it to include other partners.
When, as a land holder or a space holder, should I expect to start seeing like my capabilities of me being able to do stuff with my space?
Bottom line is you're going to be able to start using your space in game during global launch. We're going to release more details on how space looks, how it functions, what you can do with it ahead of time prior to global launch. We will absolutely put out information on what that looks like. Unfortunately, I don't have a timeline for you, but we certainly hope to release Big Time in third quarter, and so kind of backtrack that off of that. What space, how it functions, how it operates would hopefully be a few weeks before that.
And then I guess the second part is kind of tied to, being exposed to early access, the drop rate. Obviously, since, Gold Pass holder, I've seen kind of the degradation from where we were kind of getting NFTs to where we're at now. Is there any way to kind of alleviate some of the stress that people are feeling, thinking that they're not going to get anything, when we're grinding for NFTs? I know obviously the token should alleviate some of that, but I just say, I guess a lot of people don't understand the dynamics. I don't know if you want to kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, let me kind of describe to people what you're asking, and then I'll do my best to answer your question. So for everybody else, we launched initially a 10-week early access, and it was tiered. So depending on what type of pass you bought, it would be a different timeline into the game. So if you bought a gold pass, you came in right off the bat. If you bought a silver pass, you came in after 4 weeks. If you bought a jade pass, you came in after 7, and and then you basically have access from whenever your early access pass started until the game launched. The earlier your pass was, the higher your NFT drop rate. So that meant more NFTs dropped inside the game, and then you could sell them correspondingly on the open market. What he's asking about was the degradation or the decreasing of that NFT drop rate from gold to silver to jade period. So during gold pass, it was way higher. That NFT drop rate was way higher than during silver and then during jade. So some users are that came in during silver or jade or have some concerns because they felt like their NFT drop rate was not as high as what they saw during Gold Pass, and they haven't been able to put those things on the marketplace afterwards to kind of recoup some of their value. You know, the NFT drop rate is something we look at significantly. We track it, and the NFT drop rate is somewhat set by period. So they are dropping. There are things users can do to maximize their chance of getting NFTs. One of them is by playing in groups. When you go through a dungeon with 6 people, your NFT drop rate is generally higher than when it's with one person. The second thing is in terms of recouping your value, some people are playing 1 hour a day, some people are playing 16 hours a day, and their NFT drop rates are corresponding. The more that you level up, the rarer the NFTs are. To put, basically to grind more, you get more. And then, especially as we go into global launch, just something to keep in mind is there's only about 4,000 users inside the game. That's not a lot of demand, not for skins. But as we keep going through and get up to global launch, we're probably looking at something closer to millions of monthly active users. That's a huge, huge, huge increase in the number of users demanding skins, but the corresponding increase in the supply of skins is low. So it's something to keep in mind. Like when there's only a very modest increase in supply, but a huge increase in demand, that generally tends to push prices up. And it's not a guarantee, of course, but that's generally how like micro econ works. And the other thing too, because you mentioned the psychology of like, I want to see drops and stuff like that. You're getting a lot of drops right now that aren't NFTs that you can't really use. Like, for example, like your gold, your gems, your ore doesn't have a ton of utility now. That will have more utility during global launch too. So in that way, it's like one of those extra rewards where you're not seeing the full functionality of it right now during the beta, but you will see more of that. So I think that kind of creates more of that reward experience that you mentioned.
Will there be an official Time One sale from BigTime, or are the Time One mystery boxes the only way to get a Time One?
A Time Warden is one of the NFTs inside of BigTime. It's something that you enable inside of your space, which is our land NFT. And when you enable the Time Warden, it allows a player to collect the in-game token. Free to play players can level up just as fast as anybody else. But if you want to collect that in-game token and start using it to buy certain things inside of the game, then you do need to have, either find or acquire space and enable one of those Time Wardens. So the Time Wardens were dropped during Gold Pass, and then they will also be able to drop in game as well in the future, but at a very low rate.
When I have all space rarities, I will get a Time Warden or not?
So not necessarily. So it's not
Okay.
like they automatically come with it. That's not something we've released yet. Right now, the main way was if you're playing during Gold Pass period, you can.
Hmm.
Some people are selling them as well, and then they will also be dropped in game. And we may release some more other ways for users to get them, but we haven't come out with those details yet.
So there's going to be a reset of all in-game items and levels once global launch comes out.
Yeah, but not your NFTs though. You keep those.
Okay, so even like the gold and the in-game gear, all that's going to be wiped out, right?
Yeah, you'll go back. Like all the player stats will go back to 0.
Okay, cool. And then my next question was, I don't know if I misunderstood you earlier with the first question about the Time Wardens. So
Yeah.
will there be another way besides in-game drops to acquire them, you said?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. So obviously, there's already been some populated in the marketplace from Gold Pass period. They are going to drop inside the game, and it is definitely an option for us to do a direct sale of them in the future. But we definitely haven't finalized any plans of that. It's certainly possible though.
if you guys were to do that kind of sale, would it just be like first come first serve, or would there be some other aspect?
It's a great question. I'm not sure what it would look like. I think the model that we used for Binance and OpenSea in the past, as well as the sales directly on our marketplace, is probably pretty similar to what we would do again. But like we've done in the past, we would release information leading up to it to finalize details. And then that way players would know exactly what they're buying, and then they could plan accordingly if they want to participate in that sale.
Would that also include forges and armory?
It's possible, and I'm not trying to be deliberately evasive of your question, but we have not finalized anything on that right now. Just for kind of a peek under the hood about what Big Time is focused on right now is making sure functionality is as high as possible during Jade, and then transitioning into Ruby Pass. Because when we go into Ruby Pass period, the number of players inside the game more than doubles. So making sure that that's good, that there's no bugs, and that users are having a good time is very much the internal development focus right now. And then internally, we're still finalizing the testing on the economy in the space. That's mostly where the team is focused right now. The stuff for the sales of forges and armories, it's definitely something we're discussing, but kind of more over like the next couple of weeks. We're doing most of the development on those two things I just mentioned.
Okay, cool. And is Ruby going to have like an increased drop rate too, or is it going to be pretty much like global launch?
It will be lower than Jade. It will be a similar NFT drop rate as global launch, but the only space that will drop during Ruby Pass period are small rare.